Hail friend and well met. Welcome to my workshop. Today I will be showing you how I made my Dwarven style treasure chest. I had the idea for making this chest several months ago. As a huge fan of the works of J.R.R. Tolkien, I'm always looking for ways to bring his world of Middle-earth to life. And after making some other wooden chests with a more simple design, I wondered if I could build something that resembled a film prop from The Lord of the Rings. This is actually my second attempt at making a Dwarven treasure chest. The first one had a completely different construction design, which was quite a bit more difficult to make, and I thought overall I could just do a better job. And so after a few months I came up with this design, which you will see come together in this video. I started this project by designing the carving patterns on my computer. From these I could get the measurements I need for building the box. I cut several boards from some soft maple wood at 1.5 inches wide, which will be used to form the sides of the box, and then some more at 3/4 of an inch wide with a beveled edge of 22.5 degrees, which will be used to form the lid of the box. I then glue these together with each of the long sides of the box having a vertical piece in the middle, and all of the lid pieces gluing those bevels together so it will form a 45-degree slope. When gluing together boards that aren't exactly square and that you can't put a regular clamp on them for the glue drying, I usually just use masking tape and it works well enough. Once the glue is dry, I then router all these pieces to have a slot for holding a recessed panel in them. For cutting the frame pieces to the proper length, I made these jigs to hold the pieces in the miter saw at the exact point so that the cut is exactly the same for the front, back, and right and left side. For the bottom half of the box, I cut the end of each piece at a 45-degree angle. For the lid, I set the blade tilt to 30 degrees and the miter angle at 35.3 degrees. Also for the lid, I had to build two separate jigs, one for cutting the left side and one for cutting the right. For the short sides of the lid, I hold the pieces in the jig with this board that fits in the panel slot, and making sure the center mark on each piece aligns with the center mark on the jig. Next, it's time to transfer the carving patterns onto the pieces using some carbon paper and the patterns which I printed on adhesive label paper. After cutting out and assembling the patterns, I attached them to the boards using some masking tape. Then I go over all the lines using a pen to transfer the pattern onto the wood itself. Next, it's time for carving. And all of this is done by hand using just a simple V-tool chisel. Yes, this work could be done using a CNC machine or laser engraver, but I don't have one, nor the space or budget for one. Plus, I think that using a robot for this work makes it lose a good deal of character. After hours and hours of carving, it's time to cut the panels to start putting this box together. Once the panels have all been glued, I start cutting slots in what will be the corner pieces on the box. Again, the pieces for the bottom half are cut with a 45-degree slot, and the pieces for the lid are cut with a 30-degree slot. Cut them all to the appropriate length and glue extra blocks on the ends of the lid pieces. I then begin gluing all the corner pieces onto the long sides of the box. Again, I'm using some masking tape and a couple brad nails to hold the pieces in place while the glue dries. The last pieces I have to cut are the bottom and top panels for the box and lid. I have to trim the corners off these to account for the angle of the corner frame pieces. At last, gluing the whole box together. Really exciting to see this intricate design finally take shape. Once it's dry, I can trim off these excess pieces of wood from the lid so that it sits flat on the bottom half of the box. From cutting the slots in the corner pieces on the bottom half of the box, there are these gaps on each end of them, so I just cut some little extra pieces of wood to fill those gaps. Next, it's time to make the locking mechanism. For this, I will be adapting a regular cabinet drawer lock. After drilling a hole for the main body of the lock, I need to carve out a space for the latching piece to turn. And doing a test fit to see that the concept works. Now I need to cut a slot in the latch so that it will catch on the locking plate in the lid of the box. Now I'm gluing some extra blocks on the inside of the box and lid to hold the lock in place permanently and also provide some extra surface for the locking plates to be installed. Next, I cut and file a slot in each of the locking plates. One will act as the lock catch in the lid, and the other will protect the lock on the box and just make it look cleaner. I then carve out the recess for each of the plates to sit flush with the wood. I attach each plate with a couple of screws. And you can see when the lock is turned, the lid won't open. I thought the corners of the chest looked a little plain, so I decided to add some extra blocks with runes carved on them. There are 12 rune squares in all, and they simply read Khazad, Khazad, which in Tolkien's world of Middle-earth simply translates to the dwarves, or Dwarven. Next I went and carved a small bevel along the edge of each corner. In hindsight, this would have been easier to do on the router, but I forgot about it until I had already assembled the chest. After applying wood filler to any small cracks or holes, I went ahead and sanded the entire thing. And now we get to add some color to the chest. I'll be using Minwax stain in red chestnut and applying this to all the plywood panels. After taping off all of the plywood panels, I apply a few coats of black spray paint. Now comes the part where I perform the trick of turning wood into old tarnished steel. For this, I like to use the end of a small paint roller, as I find the round foam texture leaves the best impression. After dipping the roller in the paint, I rub it around on a piece of cardboard until the foam is mostly dry, then lightly sponge it on the black until it looks right. The more silver you add, the more polished and clean it will look, and you'll be able to tell right away it's not actual metal. And the less you do, the more grungy and tarnished it will look. I like to do enough that you have to get quite close to it to tell that it's not actual steel, but yet enough that it doesn't look really dirty and unused. After peeling off the tape, we get a look at the beautiful contrast between the metal bands and the wood panels. But the wood doesn't exactly match, as it is a little too clean for the old weathered look of the metal. So we need to do what I call adding some grunge to the corners. This I do by just brushing in some black paint and wiping away the excess with a wet paper towel. And the last finishing step is to give everything a few coats of clear semi-gloss. I wasn't exactly sure what to use as the handles for this chest, as I didn't want something that would clash with the painted metal effect. I thought of making handles from wood with the same painted look, which I might try in the future, but I decided to try using chains, which ended up looking not that bad. Here I'm screwing in the rings the chains will attach to. I'll put on the actual chains after installing the lining. I glued in some foam pieces to make the surface for the lining more flat and easy to work with. For the lining, I'll be using some adhesive-backed velvet in maroon red, which I think complements the red chestnut color of the wood stain. Installing the lining was quite tricky for some places, so I didn't get to record that much of it. But overall, it was basically just measure, cut, peel, and stick. Then I installed the chains as handles, and also another chain on the inside to prevent the lid from opening too far. And it is complete. Let me know what you thought of this project, and if you think such a chest worthy to hold the Arkenstone or some other great Dwarven treasure. Subscribe if you want to see the next project I create. Also, feel free to check out my shop and see what items I currently have for sale. And thank you very much for watching.